I think. And we're going to be talking today about spirit guides and things like that, aren't we? And,
yes, and give you some famous people that have had spirit guides.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I've got a few notes here about spirit guides.
And I can memorise mine.
Yeah, and I always keep a few notes. Yeah, and we'd like to know your ideas about what you think about spirit guides and things like that. And in a minute we'll be saying hello to everybody, but we're just going to sort of do... Any good news for them? You see the new cat, did you, that we've got? That,
well, Danielle's got
that's coming up.
We thought it was the reincarnation of Giz Monocles.
Yeah, so you just see that on our Facebook page. And if you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well, because it's going to be lots of new stuff happening. First time we've been back at the studio. We had a couple of weeks, didn't we, where
2
we
weeks.
Had to sort of had to do it from home. So it's nice to be back here live with you again from the new spiritual centre and spirit guides. So we're going to talk about that, and so we'd like your ideas, and then we're going to say hello to a few people first, and then just
now I like that, Lottie. Sweetheart hugs. Don't you give me sweetheart huggies, Craig?
You like my nice red jacket too, do you, today, folks?
Fresh from the ice cream
ice cream shop. Yeah. You want to buy a tutti frutti? Yes. Dee saying, great, Mr. Dunn, looking forward.
Good.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to talk about it, what you think about it too. And are they real? Kit, we often get Kit coming on, don't
we?
From
Chicago.
Every time, even when I do the short little lives, Kit jumps on. So it's nice to see you again, Kit, because I know you must be a great follower. And I know you also come as a patron too, which is appreciated. And I notice a number of the patron names popping up every now and again when we first go live.
Oh, the Maldives, Craig.
Oh, now that would be nice. Can't we swap? We're here in Winchester and it's been pouring with rain all the way here. I think most of the UK is covered in rain today.
Let's go to Bora Bora,
so let's
Craig.
all go and see you, Lena. Shall we get down there in the Maldives? That would be nice.
Now, Paul says, hello, Craig and Jane. I'm looking forward to tonight's episode. I've always wondered who my spirit guides are.
Yeah, there's quite a few interesting thoughts about this, which we'll talk about. Jane's got some ideas. I've got a few things I'd like to share with you too. So, yeah, lots of interesting things. What are these spirit guides and who are they? Suzanne saying, hello, I'm in Eastern Ontario where it's raining today.
It's raining here.
You can have some of ours if you want some more. It's been pouring here, like summer's gone, hasn't it?
Siram.
So you're going to say the name of the person?
Help yourself, Craig. I don't mind sharing.
Karanasp. I couldn't read it because I haven't got my glasses on. Hello, Craig and Jane. Looking forward to it. Siram. So Siram to you too. Jane can choose the next ones. Agility
bits. Hello from a very wet Cornwall. It seems to be wet everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you don't want to slip up and break your wrist.
Or your neck.
Yeah.
Come to that.
No, well, I know you've hurt your wrist.
Oh, I see.
I saw it in your comments, so get well soon, we have to say to you today. And Sheila. Now, Sheila would like, we're going to do a phone in at some point later. Not tonight, probably next week or very soon. And I said to Sheila, she could, if she wanted, she comes from India, so she could perhaps log in as a guest if she wants to. Because Sheila's always coming on board here and says namaste to us, and you've got some very interesting comments, and I've seen your comments on the patron pages too. So namaste and good evening from India, the land of saffron and spiritual awakening. Indeed it is.
Why you keep looking at me, Craig? Right. Hello from a windy and wet Brittany.
Ninan says.
Well, you've just said.
So it was certainly wet everywhere tonight.
Chandra, namaste to you, two beautiful souls from New Delhi, India.
More
namaste.
From India. Yeah, nice to see you. Yes, good time from India, I suppose.
Davina Halfpenny, good evening from Mansfield, Nottinghamshire. Good evening.
Good evening to you. And Nana is saying hi my favourite guys just down the road. Of course, Nana's in Tottenham, isn't she?
She is,
I seem to remember you come on a number of times. Jamie Baby Coda is saying hi, Jamie Craig.
Not Coda.
Baby Cardo, sorry, Baby Cardo. I know who you are because I've seen you on the patrons again. Hi, Jane and Craig from London. Linda.
Hi, I keep looking for you on Friday. Well, we moved to Saturday now.
Yeah, we've moved to Saturday, and I think we're probably going to keep it this way because Saturdays will be a better day for us if we have guests. And anybody out there watching like to be a guest on the show, if you've got anything really interesting you could share with us, near-death experiences, ghost experiences, anything unusual, you're welcome to get in touch with us to come on the show. If you're a well-known personality, we'd love to have on the show, but there's no money, I'm afraid. But we'll welcome you, and maybe if you wanted, you could even come and have a reading on the show. So Matt's saying, and now Matt's an interesting person. You're far away though, Matt, aren't you? I think Matt's down in Cornwall.
He's in Torquay, actually.
Torquay, or almost Cornwall. Hello again, Craig and Joe, because Matt knows all about the ghost stuff, you see, the ghost pictures and things. So if we did a ghost hunt, someone like Matt would be a great person to connect with.
He could come and help.
Yeah.
Greetings from Finland. Thank you for all your videos.
You've been watching them, that's good. There's
Hello
plenty going
Craig and Jane, this subject fascinates me. So looking forward to this video, and that's from Yvonne
That's
Kimberly.
good. They're also interested in any of your thoughts out there.
Angela, hello, missed you both, only just had chance to see you. Sending you virtual hugs. We've received them, thank you very much.
Set looks great.
Does, doesn't it?
It don't look bad. We're still working on the other one, but going to have a bit of time this month. I'll be able to do a bit more work on it.
Now, Cheryl says, hello Jane and Craig, Hamilton Parker, Spirit Guides, good afternoon, listening from Massachusetts, USA.
Yeah, it's Massachusetts.
I gathered that, Craig.
Apple is saying, greetings Craig and Jane from Switzerland.
Yeah, I love Switzerland.
We've got quite a few people follow us from Switzerland. I've had quite a few readings from there, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Sue is saying, does everyone have spirit guides, or do you live a boring life at home and don't do anything interesting?
Well, we don't live a boring life, that's for sure.
But that's quite an interest. Does everybody have spirit guides? That's something we'll have to broach in this, actually, and some of the thoughts about it. So, okay, how shall we kick this off? Let's tell people what we think what the general thought is about what spirit guides are, because people talk.
Right. Shall I start?
Yeah, if you like, Jane. Yeah.
Spirit guides can be there from time of conception.
So what are they, first of all?
Well, first of all, the people on the other side that have lived on the earth plane, have gone over, and they might connect with, say, a heart surgeon like Dr. Christian Bernard, and they might help that person with a skill, a surgeon. Some say spirit guides energy. I don't believe they're just energy. I believe they're incarnated souls on the other side. There's one famous medium called Doris Stokes, and her spirit guide was a Tibetan monk, Ramanov.
Yeah, Doris had Ramanov, didn't she? I made a few notes of some of the famous ones I can remember that were spirit guides. I mean, one of the most famous within spiritualism, in spiritualism in the UK, was one called Silver Birch, who was an American Indian. And a lot of the spiritualists always talked about having American Indian guides, which I think was a bit of a phenomena of the time. But Silver Birch was the guy, who gave the Silver Birch messages was always kept a secret for a long time by Psychic News, and it turned out in the end to be
White Eagle Lodge.
No, it turned out to be Maurice Barbanel, who was the actual famous journalist who didn't want the world to know that he was doing this. And then this White Eagle Lodge is Grace Cook. In fact, that's not far from us, is it? Here, really, it's down in Portsmouth. They've got Liss,
and there's one in London as well.
Yeah, and that was they built a whole load of centres around this one teaching by Grace Cook. So I met her granddaughter who was an astrologer.
I've actually been in White Eagle Lodge and done a meditation there.
Yeah, and she was saying she did a lecture once. We'd have to. She might still be around and not be interesting. And Estelle Roberts was another famous. Had a famous guide called Red Cloud. Do you remember hearing about Red Cloud? And then there's Seth Speaks. That's another whole series of teachings. Seth was by Jane Roberts, which is another whole sort of massive amount of writings that were dictated through the mouthpiece of her in
and
trance.
Also, I believe your spirit guides have been connected with you from a previous incarnation.
So this is where we start to talk about what are they. So first of all, people say that spirit guides are like guiding spirits. You have a gatekeeper that brings you into life, they say, and mediums will have a number of different spirit guides who are there to help with different functions. So you might have a healing guide, you might have a guide that might help you with humour, another one that might help you with platform mediumship, another one that might help you with drug addicts, and all this type of thing. They kind of come in to help the medium with the connection with the spirit world and help organise it, for example, when we go live on theatre and things like that.
Well, and another thing is most interesting. So if somebody went over on the other side and they only spoke French, then that spirit guide will translate that to English on the medium's mind.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it works like that, though I can't say.
Well, it does with me, Craig.
Because I think what the spirit world pop the thought into your as a thought, and that your own mind turns it into English, in the language you understand.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the guide helping you.
But there must be a guide that helps.
Of course, there is a doorkeeper. I call them.
Yeah, and you get lots of different names for it. You get doorkeepers, helpers, the different types of guides they talk about, don't they? Benefactors, guardians, and all sorts of different things. And then people also talk about, they get angelic guides and things like this.
Or descending masters.
So you have all these different sort of thoughts. And the question is, in my mind, very much, is how much of this is real? And how much of this is embellished, if any? Is it completely wrong, on the one hand? Is it right but embellished, people have added too much extra stuff to it? And if it is real, how does it work? How does it function? And how does it change from culture to culture?
Well, I think, a psychic artist can actually draw an image of a spirit guide that the spirit world will actually influence that person and show them. You've got to always have proof and evidential proof, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a Chinese guy called Chan who is a Daoer, and I've got nuns and I've got spirit drawings of them. But your guides can change, because I can remember going back years and years ago, I had a witch doctor that used to throw bones to tell fortunes. That's when I was 18, but I haven't had him for years now.
You see, I think with this whole thing too, I mean, spiritualism all talks about having North American Indian guides, and all the mediums seem to have North American Indian guides. And when I sat in circle, definitely I felt definite presence of someone that appeared to be a North American Indian guide that helped me.
Craig, it doesn't matter even if somebody had a bus conductor as a guide.
No, that's what I knew. Someone that said he had someone that was a Nazi from the concentration camps and was trying to work off his bad karma by doing spiritual work between the worlds.
And have you also noticed, Craig, that physical mediums and some trance mediums always have a spirit child guide?
Yeah. You see, I just want to put this out there first, really. I mean, is it real? Because when I see these different guides, I have different guides that help me. And frankly, when I'm doing work mediumistically, I'm very rarely aware of spirit guides working around me when I'm doing a spirit connection with someone. I just get into the flow of it and it just comes. When I was first developing in Circle, there was a sense of the guides around you, and perhaps the spirit will come close to you and they take a form that can almost be like, they're not really an American Indian, it's just the form they take. They're not really a clown, they're just the form they take to show me that's the humorous person and so forth. So I think because the spirit's all pure light, it's nothing, we don't keep our form. I'm not going to be Craig Hamilton Parker for eternity. I'm going to change, in previous lives I must have been different things. So same too with the people that go to spirit. I think they take a form that we can recognise them and understand them. In fact, Silver Birch, I think, said that that he wasn't actually an American Indian, but he took the astral shell of an American Indian and projected through that so that the message could be put through it. So when people talk about, I've got this great emperor from Rome that talks through me, or I've got this great high pharaoh and the grand vizier of the 15th dimension that talks through me and things, I have to put very big question marks around that personally, because I don't think those people have fully understood. I think it's a little bit immature I don't think they fully understood the way mediumship works. And I think often the people that seem to have the most grandiose guides and focus so much on the guides are often people that don't actually have much of a mediumistic gift. So I'm being a bit radical there, but what do you think about that, Jane?
Well, I think it depends on the medium's intellect myself. I think it depends on the compassion of the medium. And I feel whoever comes through on the spirit realm, a guide, is really destined for that person to help another.
Yeah. And maybe
fantasy. I don't like fantasy when they say I've got someone from Atlantis or a pixie.
That's what worries me. I worry about the fantastic sort of pixies and things, like we've seen it, haven't we? And Martians guiding me and so forth, you know. So you've got to distinguish between what's real and what is not. And I have to question if the whole thing it works on a level that, okay, it still works, because a medium will still get his mediumship, and if he thinks or feels he's in touch with an American Indian or whatever, and I still get that when I do my mediumship. But I think you've got to go higher than that. It's all in this realm of consciousness, and I think as you progress, you start to see that actually, you know, these are just beings of light that are communicating and using a mask, a persona that I can understand and comprehend. Would you think the same or different, Jane? What do you think?
Well, I think you're right, yeah.
The only thing that would question on that, and I think the question I would throw up against that if someone asked, it was to counter my argument, I would say, well, what physical medium sessions where the spirit is actually materialized, and when that happens, they form an ectoplasm and is seen by more than one person in the room. If a guide materializes at a physical mediumship session and everybody sees the American Indian stood in the room, then it puts a lot of question marks over that argument that I put forward there. Would you think so?
Yeah, and I think, you know, do it the old-fashioned way if you're doing physical mediumship, a blue light or a red light. None of this all in total darkness.
Well, I think total darkness, but with darkness cameras, because you can film the stuff in pitch black nowadays.
Green lighting.
Don't have any light, but you can still film.
Well, you can still see it. And they say that it's the medium that shouldn't wear any jewellery when they're doing physical mediumship, because it can burn them in the solar plexus.
Yeah, you're talking now about the sort of trickery that's been going on, and there has been a lot of trickery with physical mediumship recently. So we can take a few questions now, I think.
All right. Zoe says, Jane and Craig, my autistic son has been struggling with anxiety the last 3 years. He has had help from all the professions you can think of and hasn't been to school for 2 years. I'm sorry, desperate to help him. How can I connect to his guy to help him, please? That's quite a difficult one, isn't it, Craig?
Well, you see, this is the question. Does everybody have spirit guides? I mean, I certainly think mediums have to have spirit guides, because our work is communicating with the next world. And that gives us, I suppose, on one level, people think about protection. I don't know if you do need protection, but that's another whole question. But and I'm sure we've got people helping us with that communication things. Now, whether everybody has a spirit guide or not is, I don't know, it's questionable. They do say, you know, we can't prove this, but they do say that everybody has a guide that helps them, that's their gatekeeper and will guide them through life and watch over you, like a guardian angel sort of idea. And if you want to connect and you want to get healing help, well, you don't have to know who it is or what it is that's helping you. A medium kind of gets to know who their guides are, because it's necessary to us to be able to say, oh, I've got my guide here that's like, for example, I have a clown that works with me sometimes. I know that that's somebody that's connected me, that I know I'm going to get something funny come up in a minute. It's going to be humorous. So I understand that the message is about fun, being humorous, and not to misunderstand it, you see. So that's how it works for a medium, or certainly does for me. But I don't think you have to see, you know, you don't have to be thinking to yourself, I don't know who my guide is. I don't have to start thinking it's an Egyptian or it's a you know, a whatever type of guide. I think you just open yourself to the idea, let healing happen. You know, let healing happen. And it comes from the divine source if you do that. That would be my answer to that. Just, you know, connect with the idea of the divine source.
That lady's asking for help with her son, and he's autistic.
Yeah.
And most of these autistic children are highly intelligent children. It's just that their brain is wired up. So he probably is getting help on a different level.
He might get it on a different level, yeah. And I like Damien is very sensitive when we took him in that graveyard and was saying that because Damien, our grandson's autistic, and he was picking up all sorts of things about, the person laying there was saying about the people underground, and he'd never been to a graveyard before. He knew about the people there and was telling us things. So I think they have a very special gift sometimes. I do think there's a certain connection if you're wired differently to other people. You think in a different way. Mediums are wired differently too, aren't
Shining Star, can you suggest any good books on this, how to communicate to spirit guides?
I think there was one by Grace Cook's pretty good. She's written quite a lot of books about, but it's more channeled stuff. Who was it I was thinking of?
About Gordon Higginson.
Oh, I know.
Gordon Higginson.
Annie Besant. She was
Gurdjieff.
She wrote a book called.
Gurdjieff?
She was involved with Gurdjieff and people, yeah. But she was a theosophist, and she wrote a book called Thought Forms, and she looked at things in quite a deep way of understanding what guides were. She was a very well-known medium in her time. She like me, she got very interested in India, I believe, and things like that. Annie Besant, it was. Yeah, she was all involved in Gurdjieff.
You sure it wasn't Jean Besant?
No, that's another medium. No, Annie Besant, I think her name was, and she was around but there's. And you can read my book, of course, Psychic School. I tell you a lot about that in there, and also in particular what to do when you're dead. My book, What to Do When You're Dead, I talk about it there. But there's some other suggestions there as well. Ivy Northridge, I seem to remember, wrote some books on it as well.
Ireland. Can a person who had a lot of light in this world when they're alive, such as Princess Diana, become a spirit guide and they pass over? Well, I think... Princess Diana, everyone's going to claim that she works through them, aren't they? Yeah,
that's the problem. Everybody will claim anybody that they know of who's famous. And I think this is perhaps...
But you don't have to be famous.
No, and this is perhaps why the spirit people take a different form. They take... What I say, the guides are forms. They're just a projection. They're just a computer... Not a computer, like a cartoon image, who they are. And the higher spirit level people will come back to help. It's part of the Bodhisattva idea, the idea of coming back to guide people and things like that. Diana would not be in that league. Her destiny was not to become
spirit guide.
She taught us all spiritual lessons on lots of levels, but I don't see her as an enlightened being. So there's many mansions on the spirit side. There's many levels of existence on the spirit side. And when the spirit world bring their vibration down to us, and we have to bring our vibration up to them so we can connect. So they would probably work on us anonymously. We wouldn't see them as great personages from the past. I haven't got Napoleon as my guiding spirit and things like that. Although, actually saying that, I think it was General Patton.
You got Coco the Clown.
Yeah, I have got a Coco the sort of clown. But General Patton believed that he was guided by one of the great Roman generals when he went through Europe. He really genuinely believed that he was guided like that. And a number of people have believed they've had
Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc, yeah, she said she saw angelic beings, didn't she?
Joan of Arc.
And quite a few people always have believed that Rachmaninoff, when he wrote his great music on the piano, he always believed he had another great musician teaching him from the spirit side.
Probably did.
As did Mozart.
Yes.
As did even Liberace said that he was guided by
St. Anthony.
No, St. Anthony he talked about, but he was also, his music, he said, was guided by Liszt, the pianist Liszt. He always believed, and there's a lot of people that claim, well-known, sensible people that claim that they've had spirit guidance and believe that somebody has helped them.
Yeah. Then we got Nicola Avocado. I wish I had a spirit guide. That all sounds so fascinating.
Yeah, well, I suppose we all have got spirit guides in a way, because all the people that are passed on, once your mediumship opens up, you see, when I go into meditation on my own, I'll hear and feel and sense the people I know who have passed over, for example. And I'll also feel and sense around me other higher beings who I don't know who they are. Sometimes they come like through what I call the divine force.
When I see Nicola of Cardiff, I feel some connections with Russia, a Russian guide, and I wouldn't be surprised something linked to the Tsars.
Yeah,
and I'm serious with that.
Yeah. And I think Nick's had some connections in Russia.
Yeah.
In his genetics, I think. I'm not sure, but there's all of us can open to what I would say is the divine intuition. You know, all of us have a divine intuition. I wouldn't worry too much about whether it's a spirit guide or not, because I always think if you listen within yourself, your own intuition, your own conscience, your own higher self, your over self, some have called it, is always there giving you information. There's a higher vibration within each of us, which we only need to look in and the answers will come. And this received knowledge, as it were. And I think we have to learn to trust that the intuition is more than just the subconscious mind, but it reaches out there, you know, and reaches out into the collective mind, the unconscious, the collective unconscious perhaps, the universal mind, the divinity. And various spiritual helpers may help to bring that and clarify that information. But we're all able to connect with divine intuition. And that's where I say your real guidance must come. Trust the thoughts that come into your mind sometimes. And as long as they don't disrupt your reason, as long as they're not unreasonable, as long as they don't seem like the craziness of a madman telling you to do things you shouldn't do. But each of us can, I feel, connect to a kind of higher intelligence that often comes in the form of imagination, because the imagination is the highest function of the intellect, I feel. And sometimes can come in a sense of a feeling or just a gut feeling. Where does that come from? Is it from you or is it from a force outside of yourself?
Right, Ireland. Is Doris Stokes a spirit guide? Do you feel her presence when you are receiving messages from the other side? Well, Doris Stokes' husband, John Stokes, gave us a way to get married, Craig and I, in a spiritualist church. And I've worked with John Stokes with healing. And I'd say that Doris Stokes both guide us at times with our theatre work.
Yeah, because in a funny sort of way, we've had messages from Doris Stokes. We've had direct messages through trance mediums who knew nothing about our interest and connection with her in the past. And then, of course, we've also become very close friends with Linda Dearsley, who wrote all Doris Stokes' books, and she's introduced us at our theatre events, which we must mention actually while we're on in a second. And she's introduced us, and we've all felt Doris around us. She had a very powerful effect on my life. John Stokes, Jane knew her husband John Stokes. So I definitely feel sometimes when particularly we're on the theatre, on the platform, I've felt Doris around the three of us, because Linda as well.
Yes,
we've often felt that. Yeah. Can't prove it, but we did have a message from David Walton, that medium, that time, where we got the message from Doris Stokes.
First thing Doris...
We had no idea who we were.
First thing Doris said, fancy seeing you here, lovies. And congratulations on the baby. And there's no way this medium would have known. I was 8 weeks pregnant. And they said there's
not recent, by the way.
Don't be ridiculous, Craig. What's wrong with you? And they said there's many spiritual gifts on the table. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a long while ago, of course, when we first met, and it was
35 years ago.
Yeah. So we got our proofs, and I think this is one of the things that's important with this idea of spirit guides. How do you get proof of it? Because you might get an intuitive feeling that someone is your spirit guide, but sometimes it gets interesting because the spirit world will give you some form of proof by giving you messages, perhaps through a number of different mediums. You might get a message in a spiritualist church, you might get a message in a theatre demonstration, you might get messages in private consultations, and they perhaps if you get the same thing a number of times, it might give you some clarification. Oh, by the way, do you like my new mug? Boo, the psychic cat. I think one day he might be my spirit guide.
Do you want to mention the Concord Club, Craig, as well, please?
Good point, actually. Talking about theatres, we're doing a live theatre event again at the Concord Club in Southampton. Now, Southampton's hour or so from London, so it's about an hour and a half from London. So you can get to it from a distance if you're not local to us.
They have a hotel as well that you can stay there, and it's on November the 16th. 6:30 to be seated, ready for the show at 7:30.
There's a link in the comments, not in the I always call it the comments, the description of the YouTube video, and you can also see it if you dig around in the description on
and
the
tickets,
Facebook.
Craig, tickets are on sale now, and I believe that quite a few tickets have gone already.
And we're in the process, hopefully, of getting the last time's one done, so you can see some clips before the show comes online soon. So yeah, so we'll film it again,
and
hopefully.
all those proceedings go to
proceeds. Go to the foundation.
Yes.
So again, we're not taking any money directly ourselves and putting it in our pocket with these things. We feel we put it into, it goes partly into what we're doing here, but it goes into all the sort of it's not our money. It's a separate non-profit company, which is the foundation, basically. And thank you for all of you who are patrons who support us with this work. So,
right, do you want to read Nana?
One? Yeah.
Read Nana now.
Okay, Nana's saying, when a person is in a comatized state, my son was once. Oh wow! Could it be possible to communicate with that person's spirit to your spirit for answers? Would love to know. So,
I think it's very unlikely if he's in a coma.
So his spirit. So she's talking about not him communicating with people in the spirit world, like Ebenezer, what's his name, who wrote a rather good book about that brain surgeon that went into a coma for months and months and communicated with all sorts of people in the spirit world. Was a really interesting story. I've forgotten his surname now. But that was Life After Life, or no, forgotten it. That's a while ago since I read it. So I think the person in a coma, there's been certainly a number of cases where people in comas seem to be in touch with the spirit world,
or
they've gone over
to the spirit world and described it, which I'm going to have a lady for a guest on the show, which is an ex-army nurse. Great, fascinating story.
Right. But whether I've never known of a case, and I've certainly not done it, where you're trying to communicate with the spirit of the person that's in the coma. It's a very interesting idea, but how would we confirm that? And until they came out of the coma, I suppose, if they said something about that you were talking to me in the coma. But people certainly who've been in comas have described conversations that have gone on while they've been in comas, and conversations in different places, in different locations to where they were being cared for. So there's certainly some strange things go on in that, in between world of between life and death, that astral plane, as we might call it. So we can't answer that question completely, but partly there, I think, is part of the answer. And you can get these mugs and things, by the way, and t-shirts now. If you like Boo, for example, you can get them. We've got another link in the description below to, well, it's not in the description, it's they stick it up on YouTube. You'll see merchandise. So I thought I'd make a Boo one.
Right. Island's saying, is déjà vu connected to spirit guides, divine intuition? Well, déjà vu is obviously that you feel you've been around before in a place. It may be, go back to karmic past incarnations, and also divine intuition. I think you get divine intuition at the right moment. I can't actually say that's connected to spirit guides.
I don't know. Déjà vu is a strange sort of thing. It means seen before. And I think there's some, like I've mentioned this before on the show, I've said that there are cases of people that get permanent déjà vu if they've had a brain damage, for example. So déjà vu does appear on one level to be some function in the brain, and sometimes one argument they had once about it was that it's a mix-up between short-term memory and long-term memory. But they've not actually proven that. So that was one theory, that it is a kind of a slip in the brains. You know, you're interpreting something as a short-term memory. You're thinking it's a long-term memory, and vice versa. So you get this feeling
surely
that it's something that happened before.
That'd be connected to the serotonin in the brain, though. Surely.
I'm not sure quite what it's connected
but
with.
I would take it that somebody, if they step over a threshold, say in an abbey, it feels as if I've done all this before, and why is somebody showing me this?
Because there's another sort of aspect that appears to be sort of like deja vu, which is perhaps not that sort of slip of awareness that comes every now and again, but that you really do feel that you've been somewhere before, you've known it before. You know, like when I've been to places in India, I felt I've known those places before. When we went to Rome, I felt I'd known those places before. And that wasn't like a sudden deja vu, that was sort of like a deep knowing that you'd done something there in the past.
Yeah. Sheila's saying, how do we see our guides? And have we more than one guide? Yes, people do have more than one guide. It depends what you're doing in this life and what your actions are.
I think if you're doing a lot of spiritual work and possibly healing work as well, I think you gather more people helping you.
Yeah. And I would say, Sheila, it is possible to see your spirit guides, perhaps in a dream, or you have a quick flash image in your consciousness mind.
I think in your inner vision, as it were, you could call it, in the screen of your consciousness somewhere, you might get a flash, a picture, an image. With all these things, I think it's kind of an intuitive knowing, ultimately, you know, and I think if a person's really sincere about their spiritual work, you'll get to know it. And I think that the only problem is a lot of people get a bit carried away with the fairies, and it's a big egotistical thing to have a spirit guide. This is why I say, you know, play the idea of spirit guides down, in my opinion, and we should focus mainly on this idea of divine intuition. I think, you know, it comes to us, through us, it's part from us, it's part from the spirit world, it's part from a higher force. And I think we can get very distracted of this guide and that guide. But if you really want to sort of look into it and, you know, say, where is that intuition coming from? Then you might start in your meditations particularly. It's usually in deep meditation. Look to the source of where the thought came from. So if a thought, for example, in meditation comes to you that doesn't appear to be a thought that comes from you, it seems to have come from outside, you think, well, where did that thought come from? Now that sometimes can be confirmed when you're doing mediumship by talking to the person. That might be a description of their granddad or something like that, you know, whatever. Evidence and verifiable proofs, as it were. But you can do the same thing in your own inner consciousness. Look to where did that thought come from and follow that thought to its source and see if it was given from the outside and see if it was given from a spirit person or a spirit guide.
Or a god or a godhead.
Yeah,
or the
divine
Godhead.
itself. Yeah.
Yes, Godhead.
If you follow a thought, you know, when a thought comes, every thought has a trail to it, really. Every thought that you have has a trail to it. One thought follows another, follows another, follows another, and each one seems to generate another thought. But if you can get to the source of thought, you know, first of all, where are my thoughts coming from? Who am I? Is a tremendously powerful meditation. Who am I? Who is it that's having this thought? You know, that takes you to the center of divine consciousness. But also, if a thought's been put across the screen of your consciousness, as it were, an image perhaps, and a picture, and something that's come out of the blue, you know, like happens perhaps when you fall to sleep sometimes, or what happens in meditation, follow those thoughts, those visions, those images, and you might find the source might be somebody else helping you. Yeah. That's one suggestion, anyway.
Well, Jules says, I have a Chinese gentleman as my guide, along with a dragon and a dog, but knew the Chinese gentleman in my teens. He was an old soul, always felt he was very special. Now, as you know, dragons are considered very lucky for the Chinese, very strong. And she actually knew this gentleman and feels he's her spirit guide. Well, possibly he is your spirit guide, and as you knew him, probably you had a very close connection. Be interesting to see what his Chinese name was.
And I find the same thing happens with me. It's people I know. When I'm tuning in to do mediumship, I always do a meditation beforehand. I don't just jump into it. I always need to spend a fair bit of time just getting myself in the zone, as it were. And when my mind starts, too much to explain how it all happens, but you get into this certain state of awareness, And then I become aware of people I know in the spirit world first and foremost. You know, friends and family that were over there, and people I've known that, like someone like that Chinese gentleman, you know, who had a high spiritual level in their life. I connect with them first, and then I feel behind them comes the power of the higher spirits that are helping as well. So I think it's a good way in to understand who your guides are by connecting first and foremost with the people you know in spirit. And this can come through things such as your own personal meditation, or best still, if you can join a development circle.
That's a really interesting one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a good comment.
Yeah. Davina, halfpenny. I've been told by a psychic medium that an Indian chief is my spirit guide and that he's my ancestor, like a grandfather. Once again, I've got to say, you have to have proof of all these things, what their name was, and I feel it's very important, and perhaps from what Indian culture he was from, because there's many Indians.
Yeah, and this is the thing, people ask me when I'm doing mediumship, and I'm sure they ask you too, Jane, who's my spirit guide? And you say, okay, I see what I can give you.
Yeah.
But I'll always say, but, you know, understand, I can't confirm any of this. So if you get another message through another medium sometimes, and this seems to collaborate what I'm saying, then it might help. But then you could also get messages from people who've got no idea, and they're just tarot readers or something and giving you messages about guides, and it might throw you completely off the track. This is why I don't like it when some psychics and mediums will spend too much focus
on the tarot cards.
on guides.
Yeah.
You've got this guide, you've got that guide, you've got that guide. And I think, well, can't be confirmed.
See,
let's have some verifiable evidence first before you tell me things like that.
You see, people go, it's not just angels, there's seraphims, and then above the seraphims as well. They don't tell us an awful lot about that.
Another interesting idea that some of you might find interesting as well is there's this idea called the tulpas, which is a concept that came from Tibetan Buddhism originally. It was picked up a lot by the Theosophists, right? And there was a woman called Alexander David O'Neill who went to Tibet, and what they would do, the Tibetans would visualize this idea of a spirit person who would be your helper. And they would deliberately meditate upon this until a form was created of a real person who was conjured, as it were, not from a living person, and not representing anybody that you knew, but they created a consciousness just by meditation. And that consciousness would do your bidding. It's a bit like a genie type of thing. And that person would also have their own thoughts and have their own sense of identity, which they had deliberately created, called a tulpa. There's people also called tulpa-mancers, which is an interesting word you could have a look up. And there was some bit crackpotty sort of things that went on with that, actually. And there was a bit of a big craze on it in California, where they were creating a sort of My Little Pony tulpa.
God.
And they were seriously, the whole group of people were trying to visualize a My Little Pony as a spirit guide. But interesting thought and concept, actually, that you could actually develop a spirit. And in the story from the Tibet with Alexander David O'Neill, she developed this spirit. It was a sort of happy, cheerful sort of monk sort of character. But then the spirit started to get a bit out of control and started getting mischievous. And they had to get rid of it in the end. And they had to sort of do the opposite meditations to dissolve this spirit.
Sounds a bit crazy to me.
But it's fascinating. Yeah. Some of the stuff in Tibetan Buddhism is really
the bond
sort of stuff. Yeah. From the old Bon religion.
Right, Island says, will you be selling boo mugs, teacups at your theatre shows? Everyone loves a boo. I might even be selling Craig if you don't behave.
No, you can only, these are by a third-party supplier, so that's just one of the merch things that YouTube offer you when you get to a certain number of followers. So follow this channel and we'll get more little interesting things like that for you. Yeah, so you can get. I thought the mugs were pretty good. They got T-shirts and things, but I thought the mugs were quite good quality. You get different colours and things like that.
Funny.
I thought Boo could be the real fan. You know, you don't want to picture me and Jane, do you? You want a picture of something fun.
Right, now Nicola Carter said, thanks Jane, I've just Googled Russian Tsars when I was skinny. I think I could look like one of them. You definitely are, my darling.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me actually. Yeah, I
feel very strong power with Nicola of Cardo. I feel very much Russian, very strong, bear, very strong.
Really? Yeah.
And I feel he's got courage and that, and I like his energy.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting. There's something only really you could know ultimately. What's the difference between your spirit and your soul? That's a hard question, actually.
Well, your spirit and your soul should be as one, shouldn't it?
Well, there's a lot of concepts about that. Again, this is you're starting to go into the religious concepts here, because a lot of people believe that there's a soul, which is like, if you look into Christianity and things, it's like that's what is. I don't really know. I call it all the spirit, really. I think of it. Well, actually, it's all consciousness.
Yes.
These words, spirit and soul and things, can get very confusing, because if you can look down one religious system and they tell you one thing, you look another religious way and they tell you another thing, and who's the guardians of the soul and all the rest of it. Okay, that's all fine. And I look at it from what I understand. I understand it's all consciousness, and there is part of our consciousness that seems to continue after death. Now, there's two ideas. Some say, well, after death, all there is just consciousness. The consciousness goes back into the great ocean and nothing remains. But then there's this idea of what in India they call the jiva, which would be the soul, I suppose, which is like the essence of a person that continues on. That is my memories, my feelings, my thoughts. Something which is all bound by my karma somehow still persists. And that sense of of me, seems to keep persisting. And although my body changes and my thoughts change and my personality changes through life, that idea of me always seems to persist, doesn't it? And that me, I think I would call that the soul. I would call that the essence of our being. And if you look right into the center of your being, what goes beyond that? Who am I? Who am I? Who is this me? Who am I? You look right to the center of your being, and that's where you find the divine. That's where you find that we're all the same. That's where you find the divine ocean. Anyway, that's one thought.
Right. Is there any more coming up? Yes. Kerry, my daughter was in a coma last year for 6 weeks. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I phoned every day and asked the nurse to put the phone to her ear and keep talking every day till she woke up, and she remembers everything. She was in a coma after having a multiple and she told me many things about her experience of that coma. I think that's because the hearing is the last thing to go before you die, but that's good to keep talking to somebody.
I think it's really important.
It's
see,
very
people
important.
Like Kerry, they're saying that because if someone's, thank God we've never known anybody in a coma, but it must be an absolutely frightening thing, and you don't know if you're wasting your time talking to them all the time.
No, you never waste your time.
But of course you're not, because the person is here, they're hearing, and what comfort that must bring, particularly for people that are in a coma for years and years and years. I mean, people have come out of long-term comas and they've been conscious. So important that we play them the radio, we play them music, we talk to them and give them some connection in that some prison that they're in for that time while they're in a coma. Yeah, very, very interesting, Kerry. Thank you for sharing that with us.
There has been known people to be in a coma for 15 years, and because their body is changing and they're still like growing old.
I suppose you met them.
Yeah, but their consciousness is still very much there. And I mean, it must be so frustrating to be in a coma and you can hear everything, but you can't communicate.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, there's, what is consciousness?
Apple. Are there dark spirit guides? I think you have said that Hitler was someone guided by them. Was that you saying that, Craig? Hitler?
Yeah, well, I don't. Hitler was very into. He was genuinely into
astrology.
Black magic, and more than that, he joined a number of societies, particularly in the early stages of the formation of the Nazi Party. And so
didn't he also steal the Tibetan symbolism for these flags?
Yeah, the swastika. When you go to India, you see swastikas everywhere. He distorted it.
The eagle from Rome.
Yeah, well, that's the idea of victory. He really, because of that, he loved all the mythology, didn't he? He loved the idea of the, torchlight parades and things. And he was very much into, I wrote about it in Messages from the Universe in some depth. He was very much into the idea of, these Teutonic forces and powerful forces of evil.
He was looking for power, that's what he's looking for.
He was a very, very fascinating man, actually. So could he be guided by dark forces? I suppose he was.
Of his mind.
Well, was it that, or was there... the Nazis were very much into the idea of trying to summon negative...
Well,
but...
I'm sure there was dark forces around him. I'm sure there was dark forces.
So there would have been dark energies. I mean, just because there's good energies... I'm sure there's evil people in this world, people of bad intent, people that do terrible things almost for the sake of it. Look at that evil policeman that they arrested recently and the rest of it. I mean, all these awful things. These people's minds are full of a terrible bad force. So I think there must be, perhaps some are guided by negative forces. I mean, I'm sure. Aleister Crowley didn't have all love and light angel guides around him. He was deliberately trying to pull the power of negative forces to enforce his will upon what happens in the world. A very weak
man that's trying to use things, Craig.
And so was Hitler, a very weak man. Underneath, he was a very weak man.
You see, you need a strong woman like me and clip you around the ears.
It's often the case, though, I think. I think it is the weak try to pull on other darker forces, because they feel that it will empower them.
Men.
Yeah. So that was quite an interesting question, quite a hard one, actually.
There, Craig, there you go.
So we're just going to say thank you, actually, to all our patrons, actually, because those of you that are patrons are really helping us to get all of this, what we're seeing here today with me and Jane sat here in this nice setting here. Without this, we couldn't be doing this today. We could, but we'd be doing it from the cramp of my office. And this has just given us the opportunity to make it so much easier to do this work and to reach out with the spiritual work. So if you become a patron, it really does help. And now if you have a look in the description below, or you see the little things coming up on the screen, the cards they call them, the line every now and again, click on it and go and have a look and see if you'd like to be a patron. You can give a tiny amount, but that tiny amount, many drops make an ocean. And with all this, it means that we can start not only to do this sort of work on a better scale, but it also means that we can have our own spiritual centre. Now this is the first step towards a proper spiritual centre, what we've got here. But who knows how far we could take it? Who knows if we could not take it to the level that was predicted in the Nadi oracles, if you read Messages from the Universe. I mean, so it's your help, and thank you to all of you that follow us here, and many of you have popped up your questions tonight to become patrons. And if you can't be a patron, well then at least subscribe, and you can hit that little bell button there. Hit the bell when you click the subscribe. You'll get updates all the time, and it helps us. The more followers we get, the more it goes up YouTube, the more we can reach out to people, and the more the messages, if you like the messages we're sharing here today, these sort of messages can get out to the general populace and help people. So last question's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So stick your questions in. You've got any last questions now? Pop them in and write them down. Pop them in the comment thing, and we'll answer them. And of course, you can always put your questions in after the show's gone live as well, too, because we do answer some of those as well. I've been talking. It's your turn now, Jane.
Oh, right. Island's saying, can animals or our beloved pets that have passed be our spirit guides when alive or past? Animals are very in tune with the other side. Well, I believe animals do connect with us from the other side, and they can help us. Like dogs can protect us, and also cats and things, and I'm sure they can guide us, but not in the same form as a human form that passed.
You see, again, I would question, when you say what are the guides, this is why I say they take a form that we can understand. Because if a person that might live in the Brazilian jungles, in the Amazonian jungles, would believe in the idea of totem animals. They believe that they're guided by the spirit of the snake, or they're guided by the spirit of the eagle, or they're guided by the spirit of whatever animal they might choose as their totem guide.
That's just as valid. The Aborigines, they do go into a deep state, and they do send a guide like an eagle, and it can connect on the earth and see everything, Craig.
Yeah, you get all this type of totem guide that you see through the spirit of the animal that you've connected with. So, the animals themselves become the conduits for our spirit to channel through those spirits, like Jane says. So, for example, if you're guided by the spirit of an eagle, you might be able to see through the eagle's eyes. And I mean, there's a real lot of interesting sort of anecdotal stories about, these type of people. And the men that I remember reading in Lyle Watson, there's a really interesting writer actually, and he talked about how the one of the islanders, I can't remember which islands it might have been the South Sea somewhere, would be able to call the dolphins, and he would stand there and he'd call his spirit guide, and his spirit guide would connect with the dolphins, and the dolphins would appear. So there's lots of these unusual anecdotal stories of people who say they connect with the spirit of animals.
Tell me, do you call my shopping guides for me?
Yes, your shopping guides. Yeah. I tried to get rid of them. A girl in a television. This is Ralar Ross is saying, a girl in a television program which was about being alone in nature with a camera, dreamed of a white horse coming to her. At first, she was scared, but it was kind. Was it her totem animal? It could be, couldn't it? I mean, I can't answer. You can't tell, can you? Who's know? But there's an interesting little thought there. I think that people have maybe totem animals that they call. I'm sure this. Life is one. I mean, and I think we're all part of the one nature. This, I think, is where we go wrong so much in the world. We've so separated from our connection with nature. The stones no longer speak, the animals no longer, and the wind no longer has a mystery to it. All the thoughts of a person that would have lived close to nature would have known all this, the spirit of nature. We're completely isolated from that now. But perhaps sometimes, in the spirit world, maybe this separation doesn't exist so much, and there are still elemental forces, and there are still even the spirits of what you could even call the fairies. That there are energies. Fairies were actually negative things, not lovely things, but there are actual natural forces, and maybe non-human forces in the spirit world too, of course, because I mean the Theosophists often thought that there was, like in the spirit world, there was this idea that there were people, but there were also objects that would be spirit guides, that there would be actual objects that some forms of spirit took on forms that were non-human, or even just an object. So it's who knows? The malleable world of the next life probably goes well beyond human form, well beyond animal form, well beyond things we can't even comprehend. And that consciousness and life and the guidance we get from it can manifest in multiple ways. Even emotional forms they talk about. A bit like I was talking about with the idea of the tulpas earlier on. Do you want to take Nick's question?
No, you can take it.
I've had many, many, many moments where I've felt lucky, where something bad could have happened but did not. I told myself it was intuition, but maybe I do have a spirit guide without knowing.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think sometimes you just get that feeling, don't you, of just good news. There's just a feeling that things are going to go right, and it does. I think that comes partly perhaps from a spirit guide, Nick, but also perhaps it's sometimes from the power, the hidden power that each of us have to transform the world around us.
I told you were Russian, Nick.
Yeah.
I had to start doing the Russian dance.
This half of your show, Love and Light to you from Perth.
Oh.
Well, that's Australia, so you're getting up very early in the morning, because we're on our way to closing now, folks. So we're going to be saying a few goodbyes to you all. But, it's been nice that you've all joined us again.
On this wet evening.
Yes, this wet and miserable evening. Thank you for another interesting topic and for sharing your wisdom. Nice handbag, Jane.
Yes.
Your handbag's in the corner of the
Yes,
screen.
here it is.
Handbags are very important, aren't they? Very, very handbags and
somebody likes your jacket.
Jackets are all right.
Yeah, he borrowed it from the ice cream.
Yeah, I know you already given that joke. Thank you very much. This is came from America.
You look like an advert for toothpaste.
This is a zoot. This is what you call a zoot suit.
I think it's
Part
a toothpaste advert.
They're really long. They're really great. I think zoot suits are fun. Lovely chat. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Patrice.
Ooh, nice chain. Yeah, you'll have to do a special show of just your bag collection, I think.
Yeah.
I think the people would like that. 101 bags with Jane.
I haven't got 101 bags.
Or maybe a shoe evening where you can talk about all your shoes.
Gosh.
Great talk, says Gail Cherry.
Thank you.
A lovely show, very inspiring, and really enjoyed listening to you both, Sairam.
Sairam.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Indeed, have a nice weekend, everybody. Thank you for a fascinating discussion. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Pat. Thank you for a great show.
Lisa,
I'm glad you all
nice.
like it. Well, don't forget, put your comments afterwards. Don't forget to share and like this show. And thank you for
Paul.
a great topic tonight. And thanks for joining us again, folks. Thank you for answering my questions.
You like the look of nice cakes? Yes, I should give Craig one of those.
Yes, I'll tuck into one of those. We'll get those every week, I think. I think they were nice ones. Everybody likes our cakes. You always look elegant, Jane.
Oh, thank you. My friend for life, Angela.
Thank you. Love the chat. When's the next prediction video? Yeah,
shall we do predictions next week?
Well, we can do some on here if you like, but
Yeah,
I've turned off my readings apart from email readings this month, so I'm not doing the
Tune
phone
in,
readings. So
tune
I'm going to
out,
spend a bit more time making
Tune
a few
in,
more
tune
videos.
out to Maleri.
Yeah, so I'll have a bit more time to do that. You know, doing YouTube's a full-time job, really. Very interesting show tonight. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, sweethearts.
Thank you, sweet Lottie.
Yes, lovely conversation. Have a good weekend.
And you, Laurie. Eyes the needle. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the light on a fascinating subject. For Boo, I would get a mug and not a cup.
Oh.
And my Boo drink.
Tea for two. That's right, Marie.
Tea from Winchester.
Oh, we've got another last question for tonight.
I think
that that's coming up wrong.
I think we're coming to the end now, actually. So thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thanks for being your patrons. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed it, you could enjoy even more by having a look at our patrons page. And don't forget, we've got a new show coming up. We've got the show coming up at the Concord Club. So have a look in the description. You'll see where it is, and we'd love to see you there. And we might be able to have a chat with you afterwards, because it's quite a small little venue, but it's there's a high likelihood you get a message. So thank you, everybody. We're going to say goodbye to everybody now,
goodbye.
then, Jane. So thanks very much. See you soon.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Would you like to know more about the paranormal world? Craig Hamilton Parker's books are now available on Amazon. Explore the future. Discover what happens after death. Unlock the secrets of your dreams. Learn to develop your own psychic skills.